This is spiritual teacher and intuitive healer Matthew John here, and I am so excited to be joined by my good friend, Brandon Beachum. Brandon Beachum is a successful podcast host, writer, spiritual entrepreneur. He is the host of the critically acclaimed podcast, which I was so grateful to be featured on last year, called The Positive Head. It's consistently been top 5 in spirituality on Apple Podcasts and has over 20 million downloads. And it's a great podcast. I have listened to it myself, and I encourage everyone to check out that podcast. He's also the author of a book called The Golden Key. And I'm so excited to have him on because today we are going to chat about how to turn your inspirations, your dreams, your ideas of what you want to contribute to this planet into something tangible, into something real, into something that manifests here in this third dimensional reality. And it's a great thing to discuss here during Aquarius season. How do we take our inspirations, turn them into our service work, and if we want to, turn them into something that can support us financially as well? So Brandon, thank you for joining me.
Thank you, my friend Matthew. It's a pleasure we've been talking about doing this for some time, and it's a pleasure to finally be here.
Wonderful, wonderful. So I want to hear a little bit about your story, because you have, look, there's so many podcasts out there. I mean, this is the age of the podcast where, it was all started by Joe Rogan, of course, pretty much. And then since then, there's been probably 100 million or more. We could be getting towards the billions of like different podcasts that have been. And now, you see, especially people that are even younger than myself, and especially, younger than you, which people would know because you've aged backwards, as we know. But you see them, they walk around the city, they've got their headphones in, and they're listening to podcasts. This is what people do now. And so I want to hear a little bit of the background about Positive Head and, where the inspiration came from and how you ended up turning it into something that really is objectively successful.
Yeah, thank you for saying so. And of course, success is such an interesting, numbers and those things are like,
right.
Who said it? I can't quite remember, but the problem with numbers is they never end. So it's really easy to stack rank yourself. I'm successful, but then there's Joe Rogan, and he gets more downloads in a minute than I get in
but there's got to be some podcast out there on a different planet in our galaxy, maybe, that has even more downloads than Joe Rogan, right?
I would imagine.
Probably telepathic, though, right?
That makes good sense. It's the next version. That's funny. So where to begin? I was raised on the East Coast, Virginia. I currently reside in Los Angeles, Venice Beach area, and but was raised on the East Coast in a very, conservative, as normal upbringing, if there is such a thing, as possible. I went to church 3 times a week. Very conservative Christian family, and early 20s, I met someone who claimed to have psychic, intuitive gifts. She demonstrated some things that had me scratching my head. And then, that just kind of opened my eyes to the possibility of, hold on, perhaps there's something beyond what I've been, spoon-fed my whole life. I started reading books about astral projection, out-of-body experience, psychic phenomenon, that kind of thing. And, ultimately it led me down a rabbit hole, which, books like we talked about before turning this on, Conversations with God, as an example. Played a huge role.
Neil Donald Walsh, for people that don't know that book. And he was just a guest, actually, very recently on Positive Head, right?
Yeah. After 8 years of doing the podcast, that was one of the top wish list interviews for me. And so that was a really full circle moment, because his books probably had the most impact on my own spiritual remembering, as I like to refer to it, re-membering, coming back together with the truth of source and the oneness of all things.
I can relate to that. I recently, a couple months ago, had Rob Schwartz on this YouTube channel, and his first book was one of the most influential things in my path and in my development as a teacher. Like, his book inspired me to do the work that I do now.
I'm not familiar.
Book, Your Soul's Plan.
Oh,
So, so I had the same experience where it was like, wow, now I get to talk to him. And it was
yeah.
great,
Isn't that amazing? Isn't that
Yeah,
amazing?
yeah.
You manifest
Yeah.
the physical incarnation of this other, especially back then. You take, 1996, 97, around when I was reading, the Conversations with God series. It's like, it was way before social media and how easy it is to connect with people. And,
It was so
it's like
different. Yeah.
it's this thing at a distance,
Yeah.
And so I started,
I touched, like, I just, touched the kind of end of the new age spirituality awakening period where you found it through books. So like, I started having my awakening right around 2009, 2010 was when it really took off.
Gotcha.
And it happened through going to Barnes and Noble. Usually I would smoke a bowl. I don't smoke anymore, but I used to smoke a bowl, go to
the new age section.
Go to the new age section, and then like 3 hours would go by, and I had like, half of 3 different books, and that was how. And I literally had the experience, and back 15 years ago, people used to talk about this, of having books fall off the shelf. It happened, I could say 4 times for sure, where the book would just fall off the shelf and like almost like one of my guides had pushed it off.
Yeah.
Nowadays it's different. Nowadays the guides interact with most people that are waking through YouTube videos, right? But back then it was books. Yeah.
So, I started reading a lot of books, and it just became like, I can only assume, because it's my dharmic path to do the work that I've been doing for, the podcast as an example for, 8 years.
And people that don't know the word dharmic it's your soul's destiny. It's your service work, essentially, right?
Yeah, part of the contract that you came here to fulfill, I would say.
Yeah.
And so I can only assume, because it was such a big part of my dharmic path to do this sort of work, that the remembering part of, that we are all one with the source consciousness that creates and animates all things. We're fractals of that energy. It was like, oh my gosh, of course, this is how it's structured. I see it so clearly. I can feel it so clearly. Everything's now reflecting that back to me. And I'm looking around, and this is the mid to late 90s. And it's kind of like, people are like, I'd talk to anyone who would listen about it. Like,
it was very few, right?
I'm lit up, and it's like, there was no community for me to lean on. There was no, so I would just talk to anyone who'd listen. I mean, if you go back to my first episode of the Positive Head podcast, you'll hear episode 1. I say, you know what? I launched this just so my poor friends and family's ears could stop bleeding. Give me another
someone else to talk to.
Someone else to talk to. And so that's that's kind of where it began for me. And then it's what's great, interesting. I always think about the awakening process. You see these funny memes where it's like, you think it's all rainbows and butterflies, but really it's like, and it shows the person under the cover.
I know.
The dark night of the soul kind of thing. So, for me personally, I went through it, I understood everything conceptually.
Yeah.
And it all sounds and makes a lot of sense. So then there's living it and in practice.
Yeah.
These perspectives and ideas of how to deal with challenges. And so that was really it's been a long journey for me of getting, learning. And then of course with the podcast, that's when I really turned a corner of teaching best what I most need to learn, as I like to say. And so I just, kind of never looked back from there. I started the podcast, and, I think right time, right place, right energy. We connect with the people I believe we have soul contracts with, that which is like unto itself is drawn. So there's someone that can listen to your YouTube channel that's going to resonate more with your energy than mine, and vice versa. Then there's the overlap, which we're playing with right now. And so you find the people you're meant to connect with.
Yeah. I was just talking about that on the podcast I just released on the Higher Self channel for the new moon in Aquarius. And, about how, because as an astrologer, I really look, to find what are the gifts in understanding the planets and the signs. And Aquarius is about really the new age, because we are in the age of Aquarius as far as planetary ages. But Aquarius is, it represents, how do we bring our teachings out into a community? How do we bring our wisdom, our skills out into a community rather than just keeping them within?
That's what it's all about.
And I what I say in that podcast is that we have left the age of the spiritual guru. We left the age where it's just a few, before the internet, way before the internet, it was Ocho, it was, it was all these Indian Babas, and that was kind of it. And they had millions of followers, but that was it. We've entered the age where everyone that is awakening can also be a teacher. And there's a value to that because, like you said, everyone resonates with a different frequency and a different voice.
Yep, exactly. And it's really just fascinating to realize that, you are the teacher and the student. It's all within you. And then we all have that.
Exactly.
You have that unique signature and unique vibration.
Yeah.
And like you mentioned, my recent interview with Neil Donald Walsh, I asked him, what is one of the most shocking revelations that you received in your, for essentially those books he claims to have, written questions to God and started receiving answers. And,
right.
All I can say is the answers are very inspired, and resonate deeply. And he said one of the things was the realization that it's not about you. It's not, we've been all programmed to live our lives like, how do I get ahead? How do I me, and
the self,
like,
right?
It's literally like your soul came in with like, I came to serve. Gandhi said, if you want to find yourself, lose yourself in the service of others. I believe that holds true because there are no others.
Yes.
So you came here to serve. It's in giving that you receive.
Yes.
Like St. Francis of Assisi said. So,
yes.
When that can really drop in, like, it's not about you. The sun doesn't shine for itself. The rivers don't flow through for themselves. It's the tree creates the shade, not for itself.
Yes.
And so you start to understand this is actually how nature operates.
Yes.
And
wow.
Once you really get into your natural, state, it's how do I serve? And and then in the service you receive as a byproduct, not as the primary, what do I get from this?
Right.
And so once you kind of can make that switch in your brain and in your heart, I think you are really now, you've opened up vibrationally to step into, for those who are looking, what is my path? What is my dharmic path? What should I do with this awakening, this information?
Yeah.
Set the intention to serve, but don't worry about not getting enough yourself. That's going to come as a byproduct of the heartfelt intention to serve in some way. And you'll be shown.
I love that. And what you're talking about really, from my perspective, it's the essence of the ascension process itself. The essence of the ascension process is the transformation from service to self, which is just the ego being kind of the operative vehicle only, to really becoming a vehicle for our soul to shine through while in this physical body. And naturally the soul understands and operates off of just the base frequency of I'm serving the all. Because I'm a part of the all. It's only the ego that believes it's separate from everything. And that's an illusion, ultimately.
It's complete illusion. EGO, everybody's greatest obstacle. Or edging God
really
out,
is. It really is.
Ego to ego.
And that's what, before I was speaking of, the spiritual gurus of the past, that now it's changing. But what were they teaching? They were teaching how to move past ego, right?
Yep. Right. And you referenced Osho, who's probably right up there as one of my very favorite teachers. He said and shared some of the most profound insights, some of the books that I read years back, and like mind blown with his way and perspective and shares. And he's a great example because some people watching this have probably seen Wild Wild Country.
I was just going to say that he was a very fallible human.
He was a human. And I heard on his deathbed, and I don't know if this is true or not, but I heard like one of the last things he said is, I realized we can never fully get rid of ego. And, here is this profound teacher, and it's easy to throw the baby out with the bathwater for us, I think. But this guy was brilliant. It doesn't mean
the books. I remember sitting in Sedona at a crystal shop and just reading through it was profound. Incredible. Stuff, really profound.
But he's still here. If you're here, you're here learning. You may be teaching, but you're you're learning and growing too. Or I believe we leave the physical dimension when the opportunity for growth has maximized itself. We've kind of checked off the boxes. Our soul's gotten what it wants from the opportunity to grow and leaves. And that's my own take on it. And so if you put it in that light, it's like, okay, this guy, yeah, did he make mistakes? Was he part of something? Maybe he got wrapped up in, watch the documentary and see for yourself. But
great documentary.
That doesn't change the fact that, the information that he shared that is so profound is still so profound. And I think that's an important part to kind of get with all this ego stuff. People are still human.
Maybe, and maybe if he, as an ego in this life, if he had befallen the, it's like the devil card in the tarot. If he had befallen, the calls of the ego and the desires of the ego too much and power, that Plutonian energy, maybe his soul said, all right, well, we'll come back. And this time you won't be a spiritual teacher. This time you'll be in a more humble position. And you'll kind of finish up and rebalance that way. I think that's very possible.
No 100 Rolls Royces or Rolexes for you this time.
Right.
That was one of the things that, he
I know. And a lot of, even, Sadhguru is another interesting one. And who knows? To me, Sadhguru comes across as very genuine, but
he does to me too. The little bit I've been exposed.
Yeah. He sure loves his abundance too, though.
Yeah. And that's what my book, The Golden Key, you referenced is about. The subtitle is Modern Alchemy to Unlock Infinite Abundance.
This is a book actually right here, the print form. Yep.
Yeah. And it is, this idea that, to be spiritual equates to being poor and, all these things. It's like money is energy. And that's just one form of abundance. Of course, a lot of times when we think abundance, we equate it to money, but that's not even the most valuable form of abundance. In my opinion, time is health. Those two both way more superior than monetary
joy, fun,
enjoyment
of life, right?
Connection, friends. So it
organic food, water, all of it.
So much. And so, that's really what the book is about, is how do you establish a proper relationship with the abundance that I believe, as I say in the book, abundance is your birthright. The quintessence of your being. It is like
that word.
It's the essence of who and what you are.
You
are so abundant. Anyone who's feeling like, oh, I'm struggling, I'm cut. That's just a game you chose to play with yourself. Because as Neil Donald Walsh said, the other profound share from God in one of the books that I just absolutely loved as well. He said, in the absence of what you are not, what you are is not. In the absence of what you are not, what you are is not. So if you are abundance, you are literally one with the source consciousness that created and built this place. You're so abundant, you're connected to everything that is. You built it.
I get
Not
it.
only this planet, the whole cosmos and the non-physical. That's how abundant you are.
You can't not be abundant. Like if you're in the frequency of truth, it's impossible to not be abundant. It doesn't mean it has to manifest though as having $8 million or $8 billion.
It's a choice. Is really what it comes down to. How much of the tap are you going to, when you come holding your bag of sugar to be filled, it will be examined to see how large it is. How much do you believe or expect is you can claim, right? And so what I was getting at with that quote, in the absence of what you are not, what you are is not. So without lack of abundance, having all the abundance means nothing. Right. So that's a game your soul is in the absence of what you are not, what you are is not. Well, if what you are is abundance, you have been playing the game of lack of abundance so that abundance can actually mean something. That's all you're doing.
That's the entire game of
the game.
Being a physical being in the third dimension, really, is to learn through contrast and learn through exploring the polarities of life. Health versus lack of health, wealth versus poverty. Happiness versus
poverty is a tool so that abundance means something.
Being tall versus being short, everything.
The question always being posed to us in every moment is, it is all relative. It is all necessary. It is all divine. Poverty, wealth, health, sickness, it's all divine. It's all part of the one. What part of the one do you want to experience next?
I like it. I love
There's
it.
no bad choice because it's all serving you. If you're choosing poverty, that's all that's going to do is give you the contrast to experience what comes later in this life, in the next life, beyond, and for it to actually mean something. So you're always being posed the question, what part of it all do you want to experience next? There's no better or worse. It's all divine.
I love it. I love it. And, I teach something very similar in regards to money. If we really, I'm a very objective, very logical thinker. If we logically, objectively look at the financial system of the world, there is, anyone who's studied economics knows this, there is no cap of the amount of money that can exist on Earth at any one time. It is there is no artificial cap. It is always infinite. Right. What controls the value of currencies is relativity. The relative value of the US dollar versus the yen versus the Canadian dollar versus the pound versus the euro, so on and so forth. That's all it is. There's no actual cap to money. And the way I look at money, and I think it's a very healthy way to look at it, it's just numbers on a screen. Nowadays, we barely even use cash anymore. It's numbers in your bank account.
Some places don't even take it.
Credit card statement, right?
Yep.
It's numbers on Venmo. It's numbers on a screen. It's numbers when you're trading cryptocurrency.
Monergy.
Yeah, exactly. And it's all just, it's kind of fake in a way. In a way, it's all just kind of monopoly money. And the truth is that people that have gotten very successful in business kind of usually have this mindset where it's like, all right, if I start a business and it goes bankrupt, no big deal. If I start something and it fails, no big deal. If I start something and it succeeds, no big deal, because I kind of, expected at some point I was going to have that success. Now, it doesn't mean to be stupid. It doesn't mean to bankrupt yourself. It doesn't, there's a practicality, and that's kind of the lessons of Capricorn. But at the same time, if you can have this sense within you that if you got debt, it's not a big deal. It's just numbers. Matt Kahn said this one time, and I'll never forget it. It was really helpful. He's like, he was talking about before he got really successful, that the credit card companies, would send a statement, and he just started telling himself, well, they're not asking for the whole amount. They're only asking me for $30. And I'm like, oh my God, what a great way to look at debt, right?
Yep.
Why look at,
I've done that same thing.
Your student loans or whatever. Just be like, oh, they're asking for zero. Great.
I've done that same thing, having definitely navigated having debt a big part of my life. And other people stress so much around it. And I'm just like, I'll pay this off in a day. I'll pay this off in a day with a windfall of what's inevitably coming, and so
eventually it'll be paid off. How? I don't know, but it will. It will.
And that's a story that I tell and have told. And it's just like, everything is created twice.
Right.
First here, then out there. Everything is created twice. So, it's just aligning with the faucet of the abundance that you need.
I love that vision of it being a faucet, and people that have for those who know the tarot, the Four of Pentacles. The Four of Pentacles is a vibration of holding on very tightly, having fear around money. And when
currency,
you do that,
it's meant to flow.
What's that?
Currency, it's meant to flow.
There you go. Currency. I love it. Yeah. I was going to say, it's like having your hand kind of just wrapped so strongly, like you're like this around the faucet, and it's not going to flow. Whereas someone that is more playful, see, what I found in my work with others over the past decade, when it comes to abundance, the people that are resentful of money or resentful of taxes, resentful of governments and the way that they go about taxes, people that are resentful of credit card companies, people are resentful of anything involving money, there's a block there. The resentment causes a block to the flow of the faucet. When you just align and say, okay,
what you resist persists.
Exactly. Taxes are always going to be there. Fine. No big deal. Credit cards, no big deal. I'll pay them off. Whatever. Money is just, it's monopoly money. It's no big deal. It always flows. I can people that give, people that donate to charity, a lot of times it really helps that flow to go, because it's like, I'm opening and I'm now having
I've seen people that just burn money, like And I've watched Next Business Partner. He was so frivolous with money, but he had an energy about him. Even when he couldn't, he was like, it was dead or he couldn't afford to or whatever. Like, I just watched how much he moved money.
Yeah.
And,
it's meant to
fast forward a few years and he's made $30 million in the last couple of years, and it's just like, he wasn't even close to that.
Yeah. The same, all my millionaire friends that I have, and there's a couple, they have the same sort of mindset where they give because they know they just have this supreme confidence within that there's no matter what, they will find a way, even if they get fired, even if their business fails, they will find a way. And for people, the reason that we're bringing this up, because the intention of this talk, I really want to inspire people to step into their abundance and to, if you've been sitting on some sort of idea, if you've been sitting on some sort of inspiration, maybe in the new age field, maybe you want to start a YouTube channel or a podcast, or maybe you want to start a business being a spiritual healer, being a psychic, so on and so forth. But there's this fear there. There's this fear there about, how will I make it? What if I can't pay my bills? What if I can't make it, etc.? I want to inspire people, because as long as you hold on to that fear, that is such a block to the flow of that faucet that we're talking about.
FEAR, forget everything and run, or face everything and rise. You choose.
There you go.
It's perfect is the enemy of good enough. Just starting to move.
I like that.
Momentum.
Yeah.
And, and if you're fearful of, but if I do it, what will happen to me? And will I fail and fall and lose everything? And it's like, and I challenge you to look back on your life and look at all the things, good and bad, that have happened. And no matter what has transpired, you made it. You survived. You got through,
or you learned.
But no matter what it is, it didn't end you. And so when you're bringing a bunch of fear to, if it scares you and it excites you, I would say that's a good sign that it's probably for you.
I agree. And I love how you say, I actually love that. I never thought of that, but perfect is the enemy of just good enough. Is that what you said?
Yeah.
Perfect. And I like that because when I get people, that I'm working with in my group stuff or my one-on-one stuff, and they have this great idea, but there's just this fear about it. And they don't know how to get started. And my encouragement is similar. It's just start with anything. Start with something. It doesn't matter at first. Because the idea that you have, the details will start to form themselves around the idea that you have.
It's like the Indiana Jones movie. I believe it's Indiana Jones, one of the later ones, where they have to step out, into the void. There's like a big, delta, like a big chasm, and to cross, and they have to have the faith to step out, and then the road you can't see, the bridge you can't see, appears under your foot.
And that's for people that know the tarot, that's the Fool card. The Fool card is the essence of beginning a journey, leaping off the cliff, not knowing where you're going, but having that faith, taking that leap of faith, and being okay if something doesn't work out. If something doesn't work out, if it's not working, you will adjust and find something that does work.
And let's even expand that perspective, because there's relative truths. It didn't work out. We can definitely make arguments for that truth, just like you and I can make arguments that you and I are separate. That's an argument that can be made that many people would agree with. There's also a relative truth argument that can be made. You and I are one.
Right.
The consciousness that animates my form is the consciousness that animates your form.
Right.
So, and I'm literally talking to self. So, it's like, it didn't work out. Okay, that's true. Or from the expanded perspective, you got exactly what you needed to lead you to the next greatest version of yourself.
Yeah, I love it.
You learned from that thing.
Yeah.
That thing was absolutely essential to it isn't over if you haven't won. And so, I quote unquote failed. Congratulations. Life is happening for you, not to you.
Yeah.
It is a gift. Your job is to see it through that lens. And then that's how the lumps of coal ultimately transmute into the diamonds you are destined to have in your pocket.
And then, the other thing that you mentioned before about success anyways is completely relative. because and I see that in my own ego fallacies that I still work on, is I compare myself to other spiritual leaders on Instagram, on YouTube, and whatever. I say, oh, why don't I have as many followers as them? Why aren't I as popular? Why are they getting these accolades and I'm not, and whatever. And and then the higher aspect of me, the part that can think more clearly and align with truth, understands that you're doing great for where you are, and you have no idea how much wonderful success is ahead of you. You're just in this part of your chapter now.
Don't look a gift. Don't dishonor the now. By looking a gift horse in the mouth and not showing gratitude for what is.
Absolutely.
And think of it in these terms. I had Charles Eisenstein on years back. If you're familiar with his work, he's incredible. And,
can you give a little synopsis on him? I haven't actually.
He's a very sort of cerebral thought leader. A lot of people, he's recently, I saw him on Aubrey Marcus, and he's very revered kind of guy. He wrote several books, one about money actually. What's the name of it? The Sacred something money, I if I'm remembering correctly. And then the more beautiful world our hearts can see, I think is our hearts do know, something like that. He wrote a couple books that were very highly esteemed and respected and appreciated. And I remember him talking, I was at an event with him one time in Costa Rica, and I remember him talking about, he's like, thinking of it in these terms, who is more important to the world? Gandhi, who reached and touched millions of people, or Gandhi's grandmother, who nurtured so that Gandhi could exist? And
wow, who would think of that? What an interesting thought.
Who is more important? So if Gandhi's grandmother affected one right person, what's that ripple of impact versus, Gandhi doing, it's like, well, without one, there's not the other. And so who's more important? So when you start counting numbers, you're kind of we're missing the point.
I think of I was just thinking while you're saying that of the thousands of people, like hundreds of them that I've heard from personally that have told me the impact I've had on them personally. Who's to say that's not more important than if I had 2 million views on some video?
Exactly right. That's exactly right.
Right.
It's exactly right. And it's I think that puts it really in a perspective that we can learn to just appreciate.
And who's to say I didn't have some sort of contract with many of those people, or even all of them, that I was supposed to help them in some way. Right.
Yep. That's exactly it. I had someone on my podcast years ago who claimed to very easily see past life connection, soul contract stuff. And I remember him being like,
same.
I remember him saying like, oh yeah, Brandon, I'm seeing like 80% of your interviews are people you have significant past life stuff with. And I believe it. To some degree,
Yeah, I believe it.
Which would make sense, right?
Yeah. So tell us, I'm curious, so we can best, as I said, follow through with our intention of inspiring people, helping people. Can you share a little bit on your journey with the Positive Head podcast? I'm very curious to know whether you always believed in the project, or whether it was more of like, you know what, I'm going to give this a try. I don't know where it's going. If it works, it works. If it doesn't, it doesn't.
Great question. As a serial entrepreneur from 12 years old, how can I make a buck? How can I, once again, me focused on me and bettering my life and situation.
Yeah.
It's the first project I undertook that I can remember where it wasn't about how do I create success for myself.
Yeah.
It was how do I share my gift in this message?
I love that.
And inspire others.
Yeah.
And what do you know? Because the intention and the way I said
it was very aligned.
Boom.
Yeah.
Boom. That's the thing. That's the find your path. Your one thing we know, if you're completely confused about what you're supposed to do and meant to do next, I can tell you one tip, one thing that I know about it. Your highest expression of self is going to involve serving in some way, shape, or form.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's just the root of it. It's like, if you want to find yourself, lose yourself in the service of others. So you get to joyously, if you don't have the clear vision on what that is yet, don't dishonor the process. of getting there. Just know it's inevitable. Trusting the mystery. Trust the mystery is one of the keys in my book. Knowing it's not if, but when, and everything in divine timing. You don't listen to a song to get to the final note. You don't dance to get to a certain place on the dance floor. The journey truly is the goal. And by resisting the now and the process of the surprise that is inevitably coming, I actually, it's funny because I have the other voice of God on my podcast next week. I thought it was funny how that aligned, is a guy named Mike Dooley. If you're familiar with him, he does notes from the universe.
Mike Dooley. Yeah. Another, that's so wonderful. And I can't wait to hear that episode actually, because he was his books, like I remember his very first book. I forget the name. It was it the universe? It was something about the universe.
I've never read any of his books, honestly.
It was I remember sitting in Barnes and Noble reading through his very first book, and it blew my mind. It was my introduction to the law of attraction, and it was so effing inspiring. So I'm really excited to hear that you got Mike Dooley coming up.
So the reason I referenced him, and I thought it was funny how him and Neil Donald Walsh aligned at the same time, because they both, Mike Dooley does these, if you go to tut.com, he does these notes from the universe. You sign up and he sends you a random note here and there. And it's like, he's writing as the universe.
In
the one I got this morning, the PS at the bottom of it is, because usually it'll be like some kind of revelation, and then it's a PS, and I just screenshotted the PS on my phone this morning. I could go and find the full note, but that was the thing that stuck out to me the most. He goes, PS, you always did love surprises, Brandon, and wow, are you going to love what's coming? And so that's speaking to what I was saying.
I got to sign up for his stuff. That's so inspiring.
You're going to love what's coming. You're going to, I mean, there's surprises you haven't even thought of. I mean, your idea of what is best for you, you're playing checkers and your higher self playing chess. Like, chill out and trust. And
I love that. And people that are watching, if you're intuitive, you can feel the vibration of playfulness between Brandon and I.
Yep.
And this is how you make stuff happen very quickly.
Yep.
If you want to. It's through playfulness. The seriousness, it can be a block.
There's nowhere to go, nothing to get to.
Right.
You've already made it. You are literally floating in eternity right now.
Yes.
Eternity is upon you, and you are fine. There's nowhere to get to, nowhere to go. Ooh, what surprise is ahead? I don't know, but I trust it. And even if it's challenging, I trust that too. Yeah. And I know it's a gift. And so that
allows manifestation. It really may be the most important aspect of manifestation.
The law of attraction. There's a guy I had on the show years ago, Derek Rydall. He talks about the law of emergence as opposed to the law of attraction. And what he's saying is, it's already all within you. So attracting it as if it's out, it's already all happened. We're floating now is eternity. It's all happening on it. My 5th birthday party is happening on another channel, whatever our next time we do this. And, you're on next time on the Positive Head podcast, it's happening on another channel. We're just not tuned into it. So once you start understanding that, now it's like the acorn, right?
Yeah.
In the acorn is the potential for an oak tree, right? That little thing, there's potential. However, if the little boy finds the acorn on the lake bed or wherever, and he takes it and puts it on his shelf in the room, in his bedroom, because he thinks it's cool to look at, the right conditions aren't present for it to grow. If it buries itself in the ground there, it gets to stay, the right water, the right sunlight, the right conditions, what it is naturally emerges from it.
Yeah. And
that's what it's about, creating the right conditions.
And there are seasons and eras to life. And, part of my work when I do my soul plan readings, I'm looking at people's life plans as best I can. I'm looking at their natal charts as well as an astrologer. And I can see that there are certain periods in life where it's going to be more of a restrictive, a learning energy. And then there's periods where there's a more expansive energy that's present, where the planets are on your side from an astrologer's perspective. And one of the best ways to know, like, first of all, I think astrology is one of the most valuable tools we have, get a reading with myself or someone else on that. But when you are in one of those periods where things are going to naturally happen much more easily for you, when the acorn's going to be able to grow, the right conditions are present, paying attention to the synchronicities, paying attention to the subtle signs, that could come through. What is naturally
sometimes not so subtle.
Yeah, exactly. What is naturally calling to your attention? Sometimes it's as simple as you're driving and you see a sign that has a word that means something to you, or you're watching a YouTube video like this and a specific message speaks to you. A lot of times in reality, that's your spirit guides putting that, the way I see it, putting that in your path to try to inspire you, because you had asked your spirit guides, you said, if I'm not doing what I wanted to do, if I'm kind of wavering or delaying or procrastinating, I want you to inspire me so I can go ahead and do that. And, didn't you had a very specific sort of synchronicity that happened, right? That really inspired you.
There's a project that I'm catalyzing into the world this year. And it's called Industry, TREE, like reinventing the music industry, right?
Yeah, nice.
It's spelled TREE. So if you go to industry, INDUSTR.EE website, I have this whole podcast where I share the story in detail.
Yeah.
And you can even sign up when it's released to be involved. And it's really using a blockchain NFT technology to share artists' ownership with fans, and then creating community around it. But I had this vision for it originally in 2005 or so. Yeah. Around that time, 2005.
Long before not only the blockchain, long before even Bitcoin existed. Bitcoin didn't even launch till 2009.
Yep. And that's when Industry version 1 launched in 2009.
Right.
So I actually, I was listening to Coast to Coast AM, which
one of my favorite shows. We share that.
Yeah.
You've been a guest on Coast to Coast. And I'll put it out there to the universe. I've been a guest as well. It's on Coast to Coast, just in the future.
Yeah, exactly. It's happening now on another channel.
Exactly.
And
I've already seen it. I'm not joking. I've already seen me, being on the phone with George. Which is such a dream of mine. It's such a dream of mine because that is my favorite. And been my favorite show.
And what I will say is, this is a great example of something I share. So you and I right now are reflections of one another. Now, there's two ways you could look at it. Brandon was on Coast to Coast AM, and
I'm so jealous of him. Why did he get to go on?
What did he do that's better? And or
Right.
you see that reflection out of 7 billion, 8 billion people on the planet. Here we are sharing this moment because I'm such a close vibrational match to you. We're having this experience. So that's like that much closer to you.
For sure.
Look at the difference there between, look at what he's got on Instagram. Why don't I have it? Versus, oh my God, this is popping up in my field because it's such a close match to me. I'm literally almost.
Yeah, I'm getting chills right now. That is a vibrational expression of truth. There is like
huge shift.
And you know what, Matt Kahn, one of my favorite teachers, he had said something before about jealousy. About jealousy, when you look outside yourself and are jealous of something that someone else has, it's an indication of desire, and it's indication of that being something that's coming in just in the future. It's something that you've already attracted to you in the future.
Right.
It's just in your field right now. And because, I don't know if he said this exactly, this is my interpretation, you're not a vibrational match for it at the moment. That's why there's that kind of gap and you feel that sense of jealousy if you're not careful. But it's just an indication that something that is in the future.
Yeah. And so to just give high level, like I said, it's episode 1532. You can go to the industry website and check it out. But I'll give you a high level. So I'm listening to Coast AM. I was really dealing with my own, I always call it the Messiah complex. I think all of us, I am the one, because we're all the one. And I think we have to deal with that energy.
Yeah, I went through that.
Everyone has to. And some people fall deep into that hole.
I know. Gotta be careful.
Their ego.
The spiritual ego. That's
spiritual narcissism.
Ego.
I've said spiritual narcissism.
Thank God I never went deep into that, Yeah.
And I was really like, oh my gosh, I'm the one. I'm going to awaken the planet. I'm the, so important and And now it's like, yes,
it's so funny how that's like a common
else.
experience for everyone at some point of the awakening.
Because we all are.
Because and you realize that it's like, oh my God was never outside of me. That was a lie. I am God, and so is everyone else.
And you are the lead actor, actress, star
Right.
of your own private
Of your own play,
YOU universe. You are it. So, and chill out. So is everyone else. So you don't need to get
that's where it's like the empowerment,
humility
and the humility. Yeah, the integration of the two. That's what forms a very balanced
everything.
Experience.
If you're out of balance with that, you're screwed.
Yeah,
or you're just going to learn some.
Maybe that's what happened with Osho, right?
The universe is a respecter of no man, and you will get spanked.
That is very true. Very true.
And
it happened to Osho. He ended up in prison.
Yeah. So, I'm listening to Coast to Coast. I've been dealing with this my own I am the one energy, having this idea around having the idea for this new social music sharing, music distribution platform, my grand entrepreneurial vision. I've always been a huge idea guy, I guess you would say. And then so all of a sudden someone calls in to Coast to Coast AM for open lines. Yeah. And the guy's like, hey, I'm calling from the year 2063, and and I laugh, and Art
now,
Bell,
was this George or was this Art Bell?
I think it was Art Bell. I'd have to go back and listen.
I think 2005 was still Art Bell, if I'm not mistaken.
I think so. And he goes, well, and then, whichever one it was, Art or George, they laugh. They're like, oh, okay, Mr. Time Traveler.
There's a lot of time. So for people that don't know, it happens like every week, pretty much. A time traveler calls in.
Oh, really?
So it happens all the time. Yeah.
Oh, wow. Okay, I don't know. So this is the only time I'd heard it.
Okay.
And I haven't listened to the show a lot in years.
Yeah.
And so I'm like, oh my gosh, okay, there's a time traveler, supposedly funny. I don't believe it, but funny. And so George, or Art's like, okay, Mr. Time Traveler, well, what do you want to talk about? Yeah. And he's like, well, I want to talk about 2012. Yeah. And he goes, first he said, I'm actually not in your time. I'm communicating backwards because time is an illusion. He gives us very intelligent answer and scientific-ish answer. And we're like, okay. And Art's like, okay, fair enough. Yeah. What do you want to talk about? I want to talk about the year 2012. What about 2012? He goes, well, this is 2006-ish. And he's like, and from where you're sitting, it looks like the end of the world. A lot of people think, but it's actually the beginning of a whole new enlightened era. Okay, what happens? What happens to create that enlightened era? Well, there's this guy, and he's got this online music label he starts, and all his friends put their money together, and it goes from a virtual community that's really successful to a physical community, and then they have no money in this community, and they're so successful with it, and they understand the oneness of all things, and people just play their roles, and then they start sharing outside of the community, and that disrupts the dollar in a good way. Now, I'm hearing this, and this is my whole idea. My whole plan is being sort of recounted back to me, as this instigator of disrupting the dollar. And I'm just like, oh my gosh, universe, I don't want to lose my mind. If this is for me, I want to see or hear a sign. And this guy who called in said his name is Omar. I want to see or hear the name Omar within the next, day or something. It's not a name in my life normally. Next morning, I'm telling my brother about it on the phone. I stop at a stoplight. I'm in front of an Omar's print shop, right? 3 years later, I have my first business with employees, 25 employees, hadn't launched. Ended up calling it an industry. Hadn't launched it yet, but feeling like I'm missing my calling. I'm struggling with this business. Universe, if I should quit everything and just trust the mystery, throw caution to the wind, don't know how I'm going to do it, launch industry. I want to sign again. Years ago, this whole thing happened. I want to see or hear Omar again. I go to pick my son up from school. He begs me to hang out with a neighbor he hadn't seen in 2 years who happened to call him. I agree reluctantly. I'm like driving in traffic on a Monday far away to this kid's house. Why am I doing this? Kid gets in the car. First thing out of his mouth is, hey, Bradley, my son's name. I haven't seen you in years. I'm so excited. My dad just took me to this bird shop called Omar's. Omar this, Omar that. He wouldn't shut up. The kid said it 20 times.
That is so funny.
I ended up launching industry. It was like Spotify meets MySpace. Cool. I had my own currency called Blooms before crypto.
Wow, interesting. That's really interesting.
And so it grew to thousands of users. Wanted to manifest more money to do it right. Started a travel company, which took off like a rocket ship, became an Inc. fastest growing private company. Never went back to it. Got some signs to look at it now with NFT technology in the last year or so. Asked for a sign again, got a crazy sign, dragonfly lands on my nose. I go from making the decision after that to telling my friend I see at a festival 10 minutes later, I just made this big decision to bring this project back that I thought was supposed to be, which is another timeline, from years ago. And he's like, oh my gosh, I want to be a part of it. I want to help. I want to set up a meeting with my friend who makes movies, and I think he could help with this. His name is Omar.
There again.
I sit down with Omar, this older guy who worked on the Superman movies in the 80s. He's like, oh, nice to meet you at a meeting a few days later. I'm a bit of a time traveler. It's a pleasure to meet you. And I'm just like, what? And so, so I'm in the early stages of bringing it back. That landing page I named is where you can just, hey, let me know, is this I've come up with the first 2 songs I'm going to release. It's going to probably be next summer. And so it's for
so there you go. So a not so subtle synchronicity.
Not so subtle. So subtle.
But just case in point for people that are watching is pay attention to the synchronicities that come around, because there can be either there can be information there, or there can be inspiration, or sometimes both. And sometimes it could just be confirmations that you're on the right path, that you're doing the right thing, that you're going in the right direction, that your ideas are meant to manifest, and follow those breadcrumbs. Exactly.
To me, the synchronicity and spiritual breadcrumbs is one of the funnest parts of this experience. And, I get excited about them like a child, as you can hear. And I think that childlike wonder is what calls them in. Being in that vibration.
Wonderful. Well, Brandon, having you on has been so inspirational. I hope it's been inspirational for my audience. Please leave a comment below if you enjoy this. If you want to check out more of Brandon, you can check out the Positive Head podcast. I highly recommend this podcast. I love it. I was on there last year. I had a great time, and I've listened to a few episodes with people that are not me. I'm excited to listen to the Mike Dooley episodes, I said, because I love Mike Dooley, and he was so inspirational on my journey. So check out the Positive Head podcast on any podcast platform, right?
Yeah. And if you're okay with it, I'd love to offer my book as a gift.
You also wrote it. Yes, you authored a book. And this book has really, really great tips, inspirations about manifestation, both your journey, and also what I love is that it's very well referenced. You reference a lot of passages and a lot of things from other spiritual teachers, and kind of repackage them and put them in your own teachings. But you reference them, which I love. Very complete references in this, and I think it's full of really wonderful tips for manifestation.
Yeah, I tried to. My aim was, 25 years of deep exploration of, the teaching best what I most need to learn. Almost 2,000 episodes of Positive Head podcast.
Right, that's incredible.
This is 3 hours to listen to the audiobook, or 100 pages to read. Like my condensed.
It's a quick read.
It's a quick read. So
very inspiring though, and very helpful. Yep.
Thank you. Yeah. If you go to goldenkey.gift, .gift, and use the code THRIVE at checkout, THRIVE, Thrive, then you can get the audio and or ebook for free.
For free. Yep. Absolutely. Yeah. Wonderful. So check out that's goldenkey.gift if you want the free ebook or audio version of this. Check out the Positive Head podcast on any podcast platform, and please subscribe to Brandon's podcast on any of those podcast platforms that you prefer. Brandon, it's been really wonderful having you on. I really appreciate it. And
yes, indeed.
Yeah. And also for those that were feeling inspired, by our talk here, if you are yourself either a spiritual entrepreneur already, or if you are someone that has ideas, has inspirations in your head, you want to launch something, you want to launch a podcast, a channel, you want to launch a career as a healer or a psychic or whatever. You want to help people. You want to inspire people. You want to make change on this planet. And also you want to make it a career, which Brandon and I have been so lucky, so fortunate to have been able to do in our own unique ways. And I would love to assist you in any way I can to manifesting that in your own life if you feel so called. I am teaching an entire class on this coming up on February 4th. It's called How to Be a Successful Spiritual Entrepreneur. You can check out all the details on that and register clicking the link in the description box below. So I hope to see you on that call. Brandon, thank you again. Any last minute words of inspiration for my audience?
Yeah, I love that question. Thank you for having me on. This has been such a pleasure and honor. And, last thing that comes to mind when you ask that is just remembering that you are enough exactly as you are. That is so key.
Thank you. That's so powerful.
Self-love is everything. There has never been a soul, a human, more worthy in all of eternity, all the billions of people have lived. There's never been a soul more worthy of all the goodness and abundance that life has to offer than you. The only one standing in the way of that being fully realized is yourself. There is no other obstacle.
Yep.
And you are it. You are it. Congratulations. To even hear these words, you are resonant with them.
And not only that, another way to help anchor that is when you go out in the world, you go to the grocery store, you go to the gas station, every other soul is just as worthy. We're all that you said.
Yep.
It's just that we're at varying levels of realizing or recognizing that, and varying levels of being comfortable with that or uncomfortable with that. But if you go out to the gas station and just even silently, just wishing blessings, may you, this random person pumping your gas, may you find your dreams and inspirations and happiness and health and wealth and success as I am.
Yep. Everywhere you go, you're there waiting for yourself.
Yeah.
And, you're going to receive what you give. And you are perfectly positioned where you're at to get to the next step of where you're meant to go.
I love that. Nothing is ever wrong. You're never off track. You're exactly where you need to be for this chapter of your life. And just follow the little subtle breadcrumbs. And wherever it leads you is going to be magical. And it's wherever it's supposed to lead you, right?
There it is.
Wonderful. Well, thank you, Brandon. It's been really wonderful. Blessings and gratitude and namaste.
Likewise. Until next time, journey well, my friend.